The air in the Metropolitan General ER was a thick soup of antiseptic, stale coffee, and fear. It clung to the back of the throat, a taste Anna Petrova could never quite wash away. She moved through the chaos with a practiced slowness, her steps careful, her eyes downcast. To the frantic residents and swaggering surgeons, she was just part of the background, a ghost in pale blue scrubs. Slow Anna, clumsy Anna, the one you gave the menial jobs to, the ones that required no thinking. Changing bedpans, restocking saline drips, mopping up spills no one else wanted to touch. She kept her sleeves pulled down tight over her wrists, a habit so ingrained she did it without thought. It was a cool day, but that wasn't the reason. Under the left sleeve, a puckered, silvery scar snaked up her forearm, a jagged lightning bolt from a past she was desperate to forget. It was a relic from another world, another life where she hadn't been slow or clumsy, a life where she had been the opposite. But that life was buried, 6 feet under a mountain of carefully constructed mediocrity. Here she was safe. Here she was invisible. A crash of metal echoed from Trauma Bay 3. Dr. Alistair Finch stood like a furious god amidst a scattered tray of surgical instruments. His perfectly tailored scrubs couldn't hide the coiled tension in his shoulders. His silver hair was immaculate, his jawline sharp, his eyes the color of ice chips. He was the chief of trauma surgery, a man whose brilliance was matched only by his monumental ego. Petrova! The name was a whip crack. Anna flinched, her shoulders hunching. She had been the one to bump the tray. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She had been trying to get out of his way, her movements awkward and stumbling as he swept into the room. "Look at this mess," Finch sneered, his voice carrying across the entire ER. The usual hum of activity faltered as nurses and doctors paused to watch the show. "Can you do anything right? Anything at all?" He didn't wait for an answer. He never did. "This is a sterile field, or it was before you blundered into it. These are $30,000 instruments. Do you have any concept of that? Of course you don't." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, venomous hiss that was somehow more terrifying than his shouting. "I have no idea how you even got a nursing license. Affirmative action? Some pity hire? You are a liability. A clumsy, useless liability." Anna stared at the floor, her face burning with shame. She could feel the eyes on her. The pity from the younger nurses like Chloe, the smug satisfaction from the sycophants who orbited Finch, the weary resignation from the head nurse, Margaret, who saw it all but would do nothing. To intervene was to put your own career in Finch's crosshairs. "Clean it up," Finch commanded, gesturing to the floor with a flick of his wrist, as if dismissing a dog. "And then get out of my sight. Go make some coffee. Maybe you can handle that without causing a citywide catastrophe." A few of the residents snickered. Anna knelt, her hands trembling as she began to pick up the gleaming steel instruments. Her fingers, which had once sutured wounds under rocket fire, fumbled with a simple pair of forceps. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on her, suffocating her. This was the price of anonymity. This was the penance she paid every single day for a quiet life. She gathered the tools, her movements stiff and robotic, and fled the room, Finch's mocking laughter following her like a disease. She spent the next hour in the relative quiet of the supply closet, her back pressed against the cool metal shelves, just breathing. In and out. Control the heart rate. Lower the cortisol. The old mantras surfaced unbidden. She was fine. This was fine. This was her life now. She was Nurse Anna Petrova, the incompetent. No one would ever look at her and see the person she used to be. That was the point. That was the entire point. The wail of an ambulance siren, growing closer, cut through her thoughts. It was a familiar sound, the hospital's heartbeat. But this one sounded different, more urgent, more desperate. Another day, another tragedy to be processed and forgotten. She pushed herself off the wall, smoothed down her scrubs, pulled her sleeves down one more time, and went back to work. The paramedics burst through the automatic doors, their faces grim. On the gurney between them was a man, a John Doe. He was covered in grime and blood, his clothes torn, his body a canvas of bruises and deep lacerations. He looked like another victim of the city's brutal streets, a homeless man who'd lost a fight. "John Doe, Found unconscious in the East Alley off Braxton, one of the paramedics rattled off. GCS of 3, bradycardic, hypotensive. Pupils are pinpoint but reactive. Some kind of weird muscle rigidity we couldn't break with diazepam. Finch swept over, his earlier tantrum forgotten, replaced by the cool assessment of a master clinician. He glanced at the man on the gurney with open disdain. Another vagrant. Probably a fentanyl overdose with a bit of a tumble. Get me Narcan, 2 milligrams. Let's get him stabilized and ship him to county. We have a councilman's wife with appendicitis on the way. We need this bay. The team jumped into action, following his orders. A nurse prepped the naloxone. Another started trying to get a better IV line. Anna hung back, her job to observe and stay out of the way. But she couldn't look away from the patient. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. It wasn't an overdose. She'd seen hundreds of overdoses, both in the field and here. The pinpoint pupils were right, but the muscle rigidity was wrong. It wasn't the limp, respiratory depression of opiates. This was a taut, board-like stiffness. And there was a smell. Faint, almost imperceptible under the stench of the alley. A bitter, almond-like scent. Her blood ran cold. She edged closer, her eyes scanning the man's body. There were no track marks on his arms, but on his neck, almost hidden by the grime, was a small, twin puncture mark, already inflamed. It looked like an insect bite, or something else entirely. "Dr. Finch," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. Finch ignored her. "Push the Narcan," he ordered the other nurse. "Doctor," Anna said again, a little louder this time. Her heart was starting to pound with a different kind of rhythm now. Not fear of humiliation, but the icy drumbeat of imminent danger. "I don't think it's an overdose." Finch finally turned to her, his expression one of utter disbelief. "Did you say something, Petrova? Are you offering a medical opinion? You?" He laughed, a short, ugly bark. "That's rich. What is it then, O great diagnostician? Did he trip and fall into a bad case of the flu?" The other staff members shuffled uncomfortably. "His symptoms," Anna said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "The rigidity, the bradycardia, the myotic pupils, and the smell. It's not consistent with an opioid. It's more like organophosphate poisoning, a nerve agent." Silence fell over the trauma bay. The paramedics exchanged a look. The other nurses stared at Anna as if she'd grown a second head. Finch's face purpled with rage. "A nerve agent? Did you just say a nerve agent? Are you insane? You think we have a terrorist attack victim from a back alley? You've been watching too much television. He's a junkie, Petrova. Now get out of the way before your incompetence kills him." He turned back to the nurse with the syringe. "I said push the Narcan." "Don't," Anna said. The word was quiet, but it cut through the air like a scalpel. Everyone froze. "If it's what I think it is," Anna continued, her voice gaining a strange, cold clarity she hadn't heard in years, "naloxone won't do anything. And the standard protocol for his hypotension will cause a paradoxical reaction. It will kill him faster." "What did you just say to me?" Finch advanced on her, his fists clenched. "I am the chief of this department. You are a bottom feeder. You will do as you are told." He jabbed a finger in her face. "Now step aside." Anna didn't move. She looked from Finch's enraged face to the patient on the gurney. His heart rate was dropping on the monitor. 45, 42, 39. They were losing him. In her mind, she was no longer in a pristine trauma bay. She was in the dust and chaos of a bombed-out building, the screams of the wounded in her ears, the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. She knew that look. The look of a man about to die from something no textbook could prepare you for. There was no more time for debate. No more time for being slow, Anna. "Get me the Mark I kit," she snapped, her voice ringing with an authority that shocked everyone, including herself. "No, forget it. Too slow." She moved with an explosive speed that seemed impossible for the clumsy woman they knew. She shoved a crash cart towards the bed, her hands flying over the drawers, pulling out vials and syringes. Atropine, pralidoxime. She knew the dosages by heart, calculated for a full-grown man exposed to a military-grade compound. "Petrova, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Finch roared. "I'm warning you!" She ignored him, her focus absolute. She drew up 2 separate injections, her movements fluid and economical. There was no hesitation, no fumbling. This was muscle memory, burned into her synapses by years of relentless life-or-death training. "Security!" Finch screamed, his face contorted in a mask of fury. "Get security in here now! She's assaulting a patient!" Anna slammed the first syringe into the man's thigh, right through the fabric of his trousers. The atropine. Then the second, the pralidoxime. She looked at the monitor. The heart rate was at 35. It held there. Then, slowly, miraculously, it began to climb. 36, 38, 45, 55. A collective gasp went through the room. Just then, two burly security guards burst in. "What's the problem, doctor?" "Her!" Finch pointed a shaking finger at Anna. "She's gone insane. She just injected an unknown substance into my patient against a direct order. She's fired. Get her out of my hospital. Now. I want her license pulled, and I want her charged." The guards looked uncertainly from the furious doctor to the calm, focused nurse who was now bagging the patient, her rhythm steady and perfect. "You heard me. Get her," Finch commanded. The guards moved in, grabbing Anna's arms. She didn't resist. Her work was done for the moment. The patient was stabilized. She had bought him time. As they began to drag her away, she looked back at the John Doe. His eyes fluttered open for a bare second, locking with hers. There was confusion in them, but also something else, a flicker of recognition, a silent thank you. Then they closed again. The guards hauled her through the ER, a gauntlet of shocked and curious faces. They didn't stop until they reached the main entrance. They shoved her through the glass doors and out into the cold, drizzling rain. "And don't come back!" one of them grunted before the doors slid shut, leaving her alone on the wet pavement. Anna stood there, shivering, the rain plastering her thin scrubs to her skin. It was over. Her quiet life, her invisibility, all shattered in 5 minutes of defiance. She had been fired. Finch would make good on his threat to destroy her career. She had lost everything. And for what? For a nameless man from an alley. A man she had saved, but who would never know. A tear mixed with the rain on her cheek. She wrapped her arms around herself and began the long, lonely walk home. She had only made it half a block when the sound started. A low, rhythmic thumping that grew steadily louder, vibrating through the soles of her shoes. It wasn't the city's usual noise. This was different, deeper, more powerful. She looked up. Descending from the gray, overcast sky were two black helicopters. They were unmarked, sleek and menacing, like birds of prey. They weren't heading for the hospital's rooftop helipad. They were coming straight down, aiming for the street right in front of the ER entrance. Cars screeched to a halt. Pedestrians screamed and ran for cover as a hurricane of rotor wash blasted the street, sending trash cans tumbling and rattling the windows of the hospital. With impossible precision, the two machines landed, their skids touching down on the asphalt with a heavy thud. Before the rotors had even spooled down, side doors slid open, and figures began to rappel down thick black ropes. They were soldiers. Clad in black tactical gear, helmets with night vision goggles flipped up, carrying short-barreled rifles held at the low ready. They moved with a terrifying synchronized grace, securing the perimeter in seconds, their presence sucking all the air out of the street. Anna stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. This wasn't happening. This was a nightmare. This was the world she had run from, crashing back into her life with the force of a bomb blast. A man in a crisp, decorated uniform, a general's star gleaming on his collar, stepped out of the lead helicopter, ducking under the still-spinning blades. He was tall, imposing, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He strode towards the hospital entrance, flanked by two of the operators. Inside the ER, chaos had erupted. Finch, along with the rest of the staff, had rushed to the windows, their faces pale with shock and confusion. They watched as the soldiers took up positions, turning the hospital entrance into a military checkpoint. The general didn't break stride. He and his escort pushed through the doors, their boots clumping on the polished linoleum. The ER fell silent. Every eye was on them. Finch, recovering his bluster, stepped forward. "What is the meaning of this? This is a hospital. You can't just land a military invasion on our doorstep. I am Dr. Alistair Finch, the chief of surgery. Who is in charge here?" The general didn't even look at him. His cold, gray eyes scanned the room, sweeping over the faces of the terrified staff. His voice was low and resonant, a quiet rumble that commanded more authority than Finch's loudest shout. "I'm looking for someone," the general said. "We have an asset in this hospital. He was brought in as a John Doe. He was dying, but someone here saved him. We were told his rescuer was an angel." Finch blinked. "An angel? What are you talking about? There was no angel. There was an incompetent, insubordinate nurse who I just fired for gross misconduct. She almost killed that man." One of the soldiers accompanying the general spoke into his wristcom. "Sir, we have a visual on a female matching the description. Outside, north side of the street." The general's gaze finally settled on Finch, and the sheer Arctic cold in his eyes made the surgeon take an involuntary step back. "You fired her?" Without another word, the general turned and strode back towards the entrance. He pushed through the doors, and his eyes immediately found Anna, standing soaked and shivering on the sidewalk. A flicker of recognition, of profound relief, crossed his face. "Petrova," he said, his voice softer now. "Anna, thank God." Anna could only stare. "General Thorne," she whispered, the name feeling foreign on her tongue after so many years. "We picked up the chatter from his locator beacon going critical, then stable," Thorne said, his voice urgent. "The report said an unknown medical intervention saved his life. I knew it had to be you. There's no one else who would recognize the VX3 signature." Finch and a crowd of hospital staff had followed him out, watching the scene in stunned disbelief. Finch's jaw was hanging open. Petrova? Knew the general? VX3 signature? It was nonsense. "Sir, what is going on?" Finch stammered. General Thorne turned, his benevolent expression vanishing, replaced by a mask of pure steel. He walked right up to Finch until they were inches apart. "The vagrant you were so eager to discard is Captain Alex Ryder of the 75th Ranger Regiment. He is a national hero, and he is carrying vital intelligence that is critical to the security of this country. And you, Doctor, in your arrogance, nearly killed him." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "And the nurse you fired? That is former Sergeant First Class Anna Petrova, one of the most decorated combat medics in the history of the Special Operations Command. She has saved more lives on the battlefield than you've seen in your cushy, climate-controlled ER. She didn't almost kill Captain Ryder. She was the only person in this entire city capable of saving him." A wave of murmurs and gasps went through the crowd of onlookers. Chloe, the young nurse, stared at Anna with wide, admiring eyes. Margaret, the head nurse, looked ashamed. Thorne wasn't finished. "As of this moment, this hospital is under temporary military jurisdiction. Captain Ryder's health is now a matter of national security. And the person in charge of his care," he turned and looked directly at Anna, "is Sergeant Petrova." He gestured to his men. "Escort Sergeant Petrova back inside. Give her anything she needs. And Dr. Finch," he said, turning back to the pale, trembling surgeon, "you will stay out of her way. You will not speak to her. You will not look at her. If you so much as breathe in her direction, these men will escort you to a place where you will have a lot of time to contemplate your professional inadequacies. Is that clear?" Finch could only nod, his face a mask of utter, soul-crushing humiliation. The tables had not just turned. They had been flipped over and set on fire. Flanked by two imposing soldiers, Anna walked back into the hospital. The path parted before her like the Red Sea. The people who had mocked her and scorned her now couldn't meet her eyes. She walked with her head held high, the stoop gone from her shoulders, her stride long and confident. She was no longer hiding. The ghost was gone. In her place stood a soldier. Back in the trauma bay, she immediately took command. "I need a full-spectrum toxicology screen, now, and get me a portable ventilator and a full crash cart. We're moving him." "Moving him where?" a resident asked timidly. "Out of this compromised location," Anna stated, her voice sharp. General Thorne stood by the door, observing with a grim nod of approval. "Anna," Thorne said, stepping forward as the medical team scrambled to follow her orders. "We need to talk. The agent he was exposed to, it's new. Codenamed Chimera. Ryder's team was on a mission to retrieve a sample from a rogue lab. They were ambushed. He was the only survivor, and he was injected during the fight. So he's not just a witness, Anna deduced, checking Ryder's vitals. He's the sample. Exactly, Thorne confirmed. The people who made it, a mercenary corporation called Scylla, they won't stop until they have him back, or he's dead. They can't let that compound get into our hands. A sudden commotion at the door of the trauma bay made them both turn. A new orderly, someone Anna didn't recognize, was pushing a supply cart into the room. He seemed nervous, his eyes darting towards Captain Ryder's IV line. Anna's senses screamed. The man's posture was wrong, too tense for an orderly. His hands were clean, but his knuckles were scarred and calloused. He wasn't a hospital worker. He was a fighter. "Who are you?" Anna's voice was low and dangerous. The man flinched, startled by the direct challenge. He tried for a nervous smile. Just bringing the extra supplies you requested." He reached for the IV line. "Let me just check this for you." In his other hand, hidden by the cart, was a syringe filled with a clear liquid. Anna didn't hesitate. She moved in a blur, her body low. She didn't throw a punch. She drove the heel of her hand up under the man's nose, a short, brutal jab. There was a sickening crunch of cartilage. The man staggered back, his eyes watering, a cry of pain strangled in his throat. The syringe flew from his grasp. As he fell back, he pulled a pistol, a blocky shape with a suppressor screwed onto the barrel. Before he could even raise it, 2 shots, so close together they sounded like one, echoed through the room. The 2 soldiers guarding the door had their rifles up, smoke curling from the muzzles. The fake orderly collapsed to the floor, 2 neat holes in his chest. The ER erupted into panic. People were screaming, diving for cover. Thorne rushed to Anna's side. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said, her breathing steady, her eyes already scanning the exits. Adrenaline sang in her veins, a familiar, terrible song. "We're blown. They knew he was here. We have to go. Now." "My thoughts exactly," Thorne agreed grimly. "They must have had someone on the inside." His eyes narrowed, and his gaze drifted towards the main floor, where Dr. Finch was watching the scene, his face a perfect picture of horror. But was it horror at the violence, or at being discovered? "Get Ryder packaged for transport," Thorne commanded his men. "We're taking him to Site Omega. Petrova, you're with me." The escape was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. The soldiers formed a moving perimeter around Ryder's gurney, as Anna and a small team pushed it at a run towards the ambulance bay. They bundled him into the back of a waiting armored vehicle that had been part of the convoy. Anna jumped in beside him, immediately reconnecting his monitors. "Where is Finch?" Thorne asked one of his men as he climbed in. "Detained in his office, sir, under guard," the soldier reported. "He's making a phone call." "Let him," Thorne said with a cold smile. "Let him dig his own grave." The armored car peeled out of the ambulance bay, followed by another vehicle full of operators, leaving the stunned and terrified hospital behind. They sped through the city, ignoring traffic lights, a wedge of silent, deadly force cutting through the urban sprawl. Inside the vehicle, it was dark and cramped. The only light came from the glowing medical monitors. Anna worked on Ryder, her focus absolute. She was back in her element. The noise, the motion, the imminent threat. It was a second skin she had forgotten she knew how to wear. "Site Omega?" she asked Thorne, not looking up from her patient. "Decommissioned communications bunker in the Appalachians," he explained. "Off every map. Self-contained power, water, and a fully stocked medical bay. It's the only place we can be sure is secure." They drove for hours, leaving the city far behind, climbing into the dense, foggy mountains. The roads grew narrower, then turned to gravel, then to dirt. Finally, they pulled up to what looked like a solid rock face. A section of the mountain slid away, revealing a dark tunnel and a reinforced blast door. This was Site Omega. The bunker was cold, sterile, and smelled of concrete and ozone. They quickly transferred Ryder to the medical bay, a small but impressively equipped facility. For the first time in hours, Anna felt she could take a breath. Ryder was stable. The Chimera agent was being held at bay by the cocktail she was administering, but it wasn't a cure. It was a stay of execution. "We need to synthesize a targeted antitoxin," she told Thorne, looking at the blood work readouts. "This compound is designed to break down the pralidoxime over time. We have maybe 24 hours before his system is overwhelmed." "Can you do it?" Thorne asked. "I'm a medic, not a biochemist," she said. But I know the theory. With this equipment, maybe. I can try. For the next several hours, she worked relentlessly, a soldier fighting a war on a microscopic level. She isolated the agent from Ryder's blood, analyzed its bizarre protein structure, and began the painstaking process of trying to engineer a molecule that could bind to it and neutralize it. Thorne's men stood guard, their faces grim shadows at the edge of the light. Meanwhile, General Thorne was getting updates from his team back in the city. "Finch is our leak," he said, his voice hard as stone as he walked into the medbay. "We tracked the call he made from his office. It went to a burner phone that we traced to a known Scylla front company. He sold you out. He sold Ryder out. He told them where we were going." Anna's hands stilled over a centrifuge. "He what?" "He didn't know the exact location of Omega, of course, but he gave them a general search area. They'll be hunting for us." As if on cue, a proximity alarm blared through the bunker, a shrill, insistent shriek. One of the soldiers burst into the room. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching. At least 24, maybe more. Full tactical loadouts. They're here." Thorne's face was grim. "Lock it down. Full defensive posture." He turned to Anna. "How much more time do you need?" "I don't know," she said, her voice tight with stress. "Hours. An hour if I'm lucky. This is delicate work." "You have 1 hour," Thorne said. "We'll hold them off as long as we can." He drew his sidearm, the click of the safety echoing in the small room. "Good luck, Sergeant." Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the concrete hall. The sounds of battle began moments later. The muffled crump of explosives from outside, followed by the staccato bark of automatic weapons fire. The lights flickered, then held steady on the backup generator. The bunker shook with the force of a nearby detonation. Anna tried to block it out. She forced her hands to be steady, her mind to focus on the complex equations on her screen. She was back in the furnace, the world burning down around her while she tried to stitch a man's life back together. The gunfire grew louder, closer. She could hear shouting now, the distinct sounds of the enemy's weapons answering the fire from Thorne's men. She worked, her mind a bubble of pure concentration. Time seemed to stretch and warp. The battle outside raged. A bullet ricocheted down the hallway, whining past the medbay door. She didn't flinch. She was almost there. A final sequence, a final calculation. "It's done," she breathed, watching as the computer confirmed a stable molecular bond. She quickly programmed the synthesizer. It would take 10 minutes to produce a viable dose. 10 minutes she wasn't sure they had. The sounds of the firefight were changing. The defenders' shots were becoming more sporadic. The enemy was getting closer. A heavy thud shook the medbay door. They were trying to breach it. Anna grabbed a discarded rifle from a medical supply crate, checking the magazine. It was full. She leaned against the wall next to the door, the cold metal of the weapon a familiar weight in her hands. She was a medic, a healer, but she had not forgotten how to be a warrior. The door buckled again under the impact of a battering ram. The lock splintered. With a final explosive crash, the reinforced steel door flew open. A figure in black tactical gear stormed in, rifle raised. He was big, his face obscured by a balaclava. He saw Ryder on the bed and leveled his weapon. Anna stepped out from behind the door. "Looking for him?" she asked. The man spun around, surprised. That second of hesitation was all she needed. She fired a single, controlled shot. The bullet hit him center mass, throwing him back out into the hallway. She didn't wait to see him fall. She slammed the emergency release, and a secondary blast door slid down, sealing the medbay. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would buy her more time. The synthesizer chimed. The antitoxin was ready. She loaded the clear fluid into a syringe and injected it into Ryder's 4-5 line. Now, all she could do was wait. And fight. She could hear the enemy pounding on the blast door, shouting in a language she recognized as Russian. Mercenaries. Scylla's finest. She stood her ground, rifle at the ready, her back to her patient. She was the final line of defense. The sounds of the assault intensified, and she knew the door wouldn't last much longer. She braced herself for the final stand. Suddenly, the sounds of the attack from the hallway stopped. They were replaced by a new, more intense volley of gunfire, and then by screams. The pounding on her door ceased. Cautiously, Anna approached the small, reinforced viewport. She saw Thorne, and what was left of his team, standing over the bodies of the Scylla mercenaries. Reinforcements had arrived. The siege was over. Thorne slid open the viewport from his side. "It's clear, Anna. We got him." His uniform was torn, and he had a fresh gash on his forehead, but he was smiling. "How's the patient?" Anna turned to the bed. Ryder's eyes were open. He was weak, but he was conscious, and he was looking right at her. "I think," she said, a slow smile spreading across her face, "he's going to be just fine." The return to the city was triumphant. News of the thwarted attack on a secret government facility was already breaking, though the details were classified. The real story, however, was about to unfold. Dr. Alistair Finch, having been released by the initial military sweep, believed he was in the clear. He thought the soldiers had been routed, their patient reclaimed or killed. He did what any narcissist would do. He tried to control the narrative. He called a press conference in the lobby of Metropolitan General, ready to paint himself as the victim and Anna as a dangerous, mentally unstable nurse who had endangered everyone. The lobby was packed with reporters and cameras. Finch stood at a podium, his face a mask of feigned concern and sorrow. "Today, our hospital was the scene of an unprecedented and violent event," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "It was brought upon us by the actions of a single, disturbed individual, a nurse named Anna Petrova. Her reckless and delusional behavior, which I tried to stop, attracted dangerous elements to our doors, endangering the lives of our staff and patients. I was forced to terminate her employment to protect us all, but tragically, it was too late." He was just warming up, ready to lay out his heroic, fictionalized version of events, when the main doors of the hospital lobby slid open. The press gaggle turned as one. General Marcus Thorne entered, flanked by uniformed military police. Behind him walked Anna Petrova, no longer in stained scrubs, but in a simple professional dress, her head held high. And beside her, walking slowly but steadily, supported by a cane, was Captain Alex Ryder. A wave of stunned silence, followed by a frantic explosion of camera flashes, swept through the lobby. Finch froze at the podium, his face draining of all color. He looked like he had seen a ghost. 3 of them. "Dr. Finch," General Thorne said, his voice amplified by the microphones on the podium, cutting through the din. "A compelling story, but you seem to have left out a few key details." Thorne nodded to an aide, who plugged a device into the hospital's sound system. A recording began to play, broadcast for all to hear. It was Finch's voice, frantic and greedy, speaking on the phone from his office. "I don't care how you do it. Just make sure he's dead," Finch's recorded voice said. "The nurse, Petrova, she knows something. Take her out, too. The location is somewhere in the northern Appalachian Range. An old bunker. Yes, the money. Transfer it to the offshore account as soon as it's done." The recording ended. The silence in the lobby was absolute, broken only by the sound of Finch's ragged, panicked breathing. "Dr. Alistair Finch," General Thorne announced, his voice like the crack of doom. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and treason." Finch completely fell apart. "No, it's a lie. It's fabricated. She's a lunatic. They're all lying," he shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Anna. The military police were not gentle. They hauled him from behind the podium, his protests turning into pathetic, weeping sobs as they cuffed his hands behind his back. He was dragged, kicking and screaming, through the crowd of reporters who had once hung on his every word, his perfect image shattered into a million pieces. Anna watched him go, not with triumph, but with a quiet, weary finality. It was over. In the days that followed, her name was cleared. The story of the heroic combat medic hiding as a humble nurse became a media sensation. Metropolitan General's Board issued a public apology and offered her job back with a promotion. She politely declined. Chloe and several other nurses came forward to give testimony about Finch's long history of abuse and harassment, leading to a full-scale investigation of the hospital's administration. Margaret, the head nurse, quietly resigned. A week later, Anna was packing the few belongings in her small, sterile apartment. It had never felt like a home, only a hiding place. There was a knock on the door. It was Captain Ryder, looking stronger, his cane gone. "I never properly thanked you," he said, his eyes clear and intense meeting hers. "You saved my life. Twice." "It's my job," she said softly, a small smile touching her lips. "It's more than that," he insisted. "What you did. First in that ER, then in that bunker. You're a hero, Anna. She looked down at her forearm, at the sleeve that for so long had hidden her past. For the first time, she pushed it up, revealing the jagged scar. She wasn't ashamed of it anymore. It wasn't a mark of trauma. It was a testament to survival. "I was just a soldier trying to come home," she said. "General Thorne told me he had a proposition for you," Ryder said. Anna nodded. "He wants me to head up a new unit, a rapid response team of elite medics. QRF for high-risk overseas operations. They want to call it the Angel Program." "Are you going to take it?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Hiding is exhausting," she said. "I think it's time I stopped running." A black government SUV was waiting for her downstairs. General Thorne was in the back. The passenger seat was empty. Anna picked up her single bag, leaving the rest of her old life behind without a second glance. Ryder walked with her to the car. "Maybe I'll see you in the field, Sergeant Petrova," he said with a grin. "I'll be the one keeping you alive, Captain Ryder," she replied, her own smile genuine and bright. She got into the car, the door closing with a solid, final thud. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, she didn't look back. She looked forward, towards the horizon, towards a future where she no longer had to be a ghost, a future where she could finally be herself, the hero she had always been. We really hope you enjoyed this educational piece of content and hope that you could understand the moral lessons behind it. The story of Anna Petrova teaches us a powerful lesson about judging others. It shows that true strength and capability aren't always visible on the surface. People who appear quiet or unassuming may possess incredible courage and skill, hidden by past experiences or a desire for a peaceful life. It reminds us that arrogance and ego, like Dr. Finch's, can be blinding, leading to terrible mistakes and ultimately to ruin. On the other hand, humility, courage, and doing the right thing, even at great personal cost, are the true measures of a person's character. Doing the right thing always pays off in the end, and true strength is not about status, but character. Never judge a book by its cover. What would you have done if you were in Anna's position? Would you have risked your career to save a stranger against a powerful boss's direct orders? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Have a nice rest of your day.